Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to this Skill Up session. My name is Cody, and welcome to this learning experience where we have an exciting conversation lined up for you. Before we get that ball rolling, we do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to review with everyone. First off, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch at a later time, or of course you can share with your team. You will be receiving an email with a link to access the recording on demand. Now, if you would like to engage with our panelists today, there are a couple of options for you to do so. The first option to do so is the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So I see we've already got a global audience, but we would love to hear where everyone else is from. So please do check in with us on the chat because I know we've got a global audience and a global panel. Now, if you have any specific questions for our panel today, please send those into the Q&A tab. Sending in your questions to the Q&A just helps us keep track of which questions we've tackled, which ones we've still got lined up. And we do want to address as many questions as we can today, so be sure to send those in. All right, so today our roundtable conversation is on how to implement platform engineering at scale. And joined by Turja Chaudhary, Assistant Director at Cloud Platforms, James Leone, Platform Engineering Azure Practice Director at IBM Consulting, Sharon Florentine, Managing Editor here at Techstrong Group, Alan Schimmel, Founder and CEO of Techstrong Group, and we've got Mike Bazard, Chief Content Officer here at Techstrong Group. So to our panel today, thank you so much for joining us today. Sharon, I know you've got a list of questions you'd like to run us through, so why don't you go ahead and take it from here?
Sure will. Thank you so much, Cody. It is great to be here with all of you this morning, this afternoon, or this evening. I'm hoping I can stay out of the way of this conversation. I'm going to throw out some questions to get us rolling, and I think you all will enjoy what we have in store for you today. So platform engineering at scale. I want to start off with, what are we talking about when we say at scale? Like, how big does a platform engineering practice or a team or an implementation, how big does it have to get before we really need to start addressing scalability issues? Turja, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you, first of all, to all of the panelists and the audience. Hope everybody is having a great day. So to be very fair, as on a lot of the answers within IT, the answer is it depends. So what I have seen, for example, from some of the work that the scale of a platform is kind of directly related to the business teams which are consuming the platform. Because at the end of the day, the platform is what? It's not something that you directly sell to the client. Right? It's an internal platform mostly, where the consumer are other business teams within the same enterprise. So say, for example, you have an email service. So you have created kind of an email server, and now you're offering it as a consumer. So what we have normally seen is that till the 2030 consumer mark. So say, for example, I have built a platform or an offering, and the consumers of that offering within the platform has reached this 20 to 30 mark. Till then, I have been able to, for example, do some sort of a manual approach, talk to them individually. Even if I do not have good documentation, we have been able to kind of guide them through the journey by talking to them, chat, and all of those options. But the moment it kind of crosses that after 30 to say 80, and then again after 100, that's when you know things are actually kicking in. That's when you can actually think, you get all of the problems that normal IT gets with scale. Right. So you now have different people asking different questions, trying to do different things. So that's when you need to have a holistic approach, a kind of scalable approach. To be very fair, a platform is normally created within an enterprise to tackle the problem of scale. So I normally would expect that a platform will be prepared even from day zero to handle the scale. It's not like any other product, like a website that you have normally created and you don't know how many users will use your website. It could be 200 or 20 million. Whereas for a platform, you have an idea because there was a reason for you to create that internal platform. The business teams had come to you, the technical teams had come to you, the DevOps teams had come to you. So you have some idea of the scale you need to cater to. So that's why it's not like that kind of because you're not external facing, you don't have that huge consumer problem. But at the same time, yes, by default, if your design is good and you kind of tackle that idea of scalable by default, then I think you are better positioned than some of the other teams.
Yeah, I think to add to that, so many people make the common mistake, right? They're building for scale for what they have today without thinking about where are they going to be 3 years from now and building for that, because sometimes you'll build something for today that just won't work 3 years, and then you got to do it all over again. And then you're being asked some difficult questions by the CFO.
Yeah, and to add a little bit, you put a great number on it, Taraja, 20 to 30. And I also look at the fact of, are we talking about an explicit platform engineering team, or just individuals who wear that hat, but maybe it's not a dedicated team? And for me, a big thing when you want to start thinking about, do we truly need a platform engineering team? Like this is kind of its own team versus highly integrated with application teams. It's going to be driven by the number of applications your company's creating, right? So if you're a startup SaaS, and maybe you do have 30 developers, but the whole team has decided, you know what, we're going to be deploying microservice based into some variant of a Kubernetes, an AKS, OpenShift, roll your own EKS. There's a bunch of those. Then the need for an explicit platform engineering team, I would say, is less. You have a common runtime platform and you're really just one application. But once you start seeing multiple teams, you mentioned kind of business units. So maybe you were thinking like the term shadow IT, which I really don't like. It's just development teams making applications and services specifically for their business unit in a larger enterprise. If we have a common platform, then we're going to start introducing it. And then, but if you have those teams all over the place, one's using Kubernetes, the other is using a bunch of cloud provider specific PaaS services. Maybe it's to host static, serverless apps, let's say. So one is microservices running on Kubernetes, another is serverless apps on Amazon, and then another is serverless apps on AWS. That can make it very difficult to manage and juggle with a consolidated team. So my point being, your scalability is going to kind of be based on finding some common runtime being consumed by multiple applications. That's when you're starting to bring out and create an expressed platform engineering team, as opposed to getting this into smaller bites and pieces across one team, right? Because you can't just, if you have a very diverse landscape, introducing that platform engineering, which we'll talk about more, can be a little more difficult. And that bleeds into some of the later things we're going to touch on with culture and beyond.
There's a question in the Q&A section from one of the attendees that I think bears on this, though, James. And that is, I've always been taught when I ran on software companies that I founded, that everything could be measured and we measure everything. And that's how you determine what you're going to do. And we're talking here about scaling platform engineering. There has to be, and this is the difference between emerging practices and best practices. And when you have a relatively new concept like platform engineering, you don't have best practices codified yet, you have emerging practices. There has to be a common set of facts. There has to be a common truth. What the question is, what kind of metrics from a company do you think help in determining the scale roadmap? So what is that, commonality, that not least common denominator, but what are those metrics that we should be looking at in terms of, hey, are we scalable today? Are we scalable enough for tomorrow? What are the metrics? And I think our audience wants to know that, right?
Yeah. So maybe I can take the first step. See, at the end of the day, what I believe and what I commonly talk about is that you have to, and that's a best practice kind of, again, in this field of emerging platform engineering, is that treat your platform as a product. Okay. So the moment you start treating your platform as a product, then all of the good kind of stuff that we know about product management, product engineering. So it's a better known field, right? We have been handling, creating, building, monitoring, measuring, monetizing everything products for a long, long time now. So the moment you kind of think about treating your platform as a product, then you have all of those key metrics that how do you have identified, okay, whether your product scales or not. It could be, for example, the availability metrics that your SRE team is kind of moving, how many regions you have, how many logins are coming from different regions, how many incidents you have. So again, what I'm trying to say, the metrics could be different. The metrics could be based on that enterprise's definition of what it seems feasible to them to capture also. But at a very high level, what we practice, for example, within our enterprises, that we try to treat our platform as a product. And as a result of treating our platform as a product, we kind of go with all of the product-centric metrics. Say, for example, mean time to recovery, for just as an example, or the time to 10th PR. Again, these are all different metrics, but any metric that normally suits in a product-centric landscape, you can try to kind of apply it also in your platforms. At a high level, this is the guidance I would give.
Fair. There's a follow-up in the queue in the chat from folks where trying to gather this information is fine if you're only dealing, as James, to your point, with one team or even one organization for that matter. But what happens when you have, federated access to institutions like, for instance, educational institutions, where we don't even know the total numbers and the external ID servers, right? I mean, how do you wrap your head around scalability in those kinds of environments? And I think, look, that may be a corner case. That may not be the main, for 90% of our people out here, you're not dealing with that. But there are these corner cases, I think, that pop up into it, that make it hard.
It's an interesting comment on the federated access. So when we've been talking about scalability throughout this video so far, I've been more or less assuming organizational scalability of the platform engineering team itself and the development teams. I hear about federated access. That to me feels more like scalability of the product being created, right? Can how many different client organizations can we onboard to the product that we're creating? So I would table that as something a little bit different. That's more scalability of your runtime application or the design behind that and how it can integrate with various identity providers. And we may even touch on the acronym IDP a little bit later, which in platform engineering world means one thing, and in security and the last 15 years means something a little bit different. I didn't choose that acronym, but yeah. So the point being, it's a little bit different when we're talking scalability of the application and the systems being deployed versus organizational scalability. And I really come back and we talk about measurements. Terja put forth some great measurements for how's the quality, how can we measure the quality of the platform engineering team, looking at a lot of your service level objectives, service level indicators. Are they doing a good job? Deployment failures, deployment success, rollback time, these kind of things. That's measuring the effectiveness of the platform engineering. But then there could be measuring metrics which drive how much do we need to invest in platform engineering. And there I would again go back to your kind of your different runtime stacks. In the world of the web, it's so crazy. We have old monolithic applications running. We have brand new hot microservices, and then there's serverless, right? You have this whole spectrum of runtime, and the mentality and the skills needed for those different platforms, I think are different. And so when you have a lot of them, that's when it can make it very difficult to require every team to kind of all the different development teams to understand all these different tech stacks. And that's when your platform engineering can really help come in and kind of abstract that, because they're looking at this as a little more of a product mindset.
Well, to that point, let me ask this. Do you think that Kubernetes and the cloud native migrations, modernization, and all that are going to force the platform engineering issue in organizations? Is that one of the driving factors here?
I think that's a great point, right? So platform engineering is not Kubernetes. Kubernetes is not platform engineering, but there is definitely a close symbiosis, right, between the two. Because let's assume that this is the runtime platform. If you're a developer, you're creating individual services. Maybe you want to create a new service, deploying it to Kubernetes runtime. that is a great use case for ensuring you have a platform engineering team that can integrate and add that service into your Kubernetes cluster, setting up the service mesh, defining the service intercommunication, service discovery, a lot of these things that can create cognitive overload for developers if they have to think about all these things. Hey, I just want to write a new service, and now I have to think about this huge checklist of things. All of a sudden, a platform engineering group can really alleviate that. And I do think that helps drive it. I think just having a more consistent stack amongst teams can really help drive it. If you're trying to have a platform engineering team that can cover every possible combination of application runtime stacks, it's going to be a very difficult road because you're trying to please such a diverse landscape from a technology perspective. And the mindset even of the developers that are building in those is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
So how I think about it, to be very fair, is kind of in line with what James is saying, that your platform engineering or your platform is an opinionated approach or an opinionated implementation of your enterprise's architectural approach or an abstraction of that approach, which the enterprise thinks is the best way to do something. So say, for example, if the enterprise architecture team or your overall enterprise as a whole thinks that the best way to do, say, for example, loading data is via an SFTP, just as an example, rather than via a web portal, then your platform is basically will offer a component, an SFTP based component that will be an actual implementation of that abstraction. So this is number one. So your platform is nothing but an kind of normally the best way to do something in your enterprise should be reflected in the way you can do it via the platform. That is number one. And number two, coming to that perspective of cognitive load, which is very important. So I was just speaking on another forum a few days back. So over time, you will see there is this topic of shift left, right? So we want to shift more and more stuff to the development end. But what is it ending up doing? It's ending up increasing the cognitive load of us developers and engineers. So now an engineer has to know how to troubleshoot a Kubernetes, how to write a Graph API, how to debug a Cosmos DB cluster, and all of that. So the platform engineering approach is, rather than shifting left, is shifting down. So say, for example, you need people to run unit tests. So your platform will give you, as an enterprise, will give you a platform to run unit tests very easily. Say you need an SMTP-based email service, your platform will give you that component. Say you see a lot of data ingestion use cases, your platform will give you that component. So rather than shifting left and understanding everything as a developer and becoming a full stack developer, you can actually concentrate on what you need to do and let the platform kind of take care of everything else. And I will finish by saying that there is a very nice book called Team Topologies, where they have researched a lot on how teams should structure in an enterprise to be very functional. There also, if you see, there are stream-aligned teams. Okay, the stream-aligned teams are the team which is actually doing the business functionality. So you have a business requirement to create an e-commerce web application. That is what the stream-aligned team is doing. But to support it and ensure that the cognitive load of that team does not become so high that they burn out or they become frustrated, the platform team and other teams are kind of enabling them or facilitating them so that they can be more successful at the job. So this is how I think about the platform holistically.
You know, one of the participants asked the name of the book, and I think it was, I know Topology was
Team Topologies. I will write it.
Topologies.
Yeah,
Great
put
book.
it in the chat. It is a great book. You know, we've got a few questions, both in Q&A and from the, if someone, Sharon, if you can grab a Google listing, maybe an Amazon for that Team Topologies and put it in there.
You got it. Working on it. You want to take the question part?
Yeah, one of the questions that came is something I really wanted to hit on in today's thing, and that is in today's webinar, and that is, how do you address the resistance from DevOps teams from using platforms developed by platform engineering? Many DevOps teams work in their own silos where they like to manage everything they do. So this has been a common anti-pattern that we've seen, right? I think with platform engineering, and that is somehow DevOps is dead, long live platform engineering, or somehow platform engineering and DevOps are not compatible. That's nonsense. Of course they're compatible. right? And it's not a question of silos even. It's a question of, this is all part of the continuum of software development. Your platform that you talk about, shift left. At the far left, you've got your business kind of architects and, why you're doing something. You have your platform engineering to set up the environment. You've got your developers developing, which is what they want to do. You've got your testers, your DevOps people, and of course you have your SREs as well. I mean, James, do you see this?
This is great, right? So I saw that question about, hey, my dev teams, they're hosting their application. They're probably doing the full stack, the full dev and ops. You build it, you run it kind of mentality. Then I saw another item posted in the chat. Somebody was talking about they are directing a platform engineering team and supporting both platforms. So it's almost like you have two spectrums. One, you're in a company where nobody wants to deal with platform engineering. They want to do it all themselves. And then I'm feeling when you say 12 platforms, I go, okay, wow, that's a lot to undertake, right? 12 different platforms. And I'm not sure all the specifics, but I can infer some things there. But you're kind of on the other end of the spectrum where word's out, there's a platform engineering team. Let's just put everything on their plate. All those things we didn't want to deal with, let's give it to them. So we have those two ends of the spectrum that have been well articulated by the audience here. And I would say, well, start slow, right? I guess one thing is culturally there needs to be buy-in. There needs to be, you can't be at either extreme, right? For platform engineering to work, you can't have a bunch of people just dumping off all these random platforms. And that was one of the metrics I was really getting sensitive to, because I'm sensitive to seeing not just what is success, but some of the having gone through and seen failures where they go, it's platform engineering, we'll do it all. And then you get all these, okay, we'll do Power BI and do Kubernetes and do serverless. And, oh, by the way, we have this monolithic applications that run on some JBoss application server, kind of a stack. And do that, and all of those have a very different mentality. So platform engineering is kind of adding, it's a product, right? Your consumer is internal development teams. So it's looking at the demand of where is just like any market analysis, where's the biggest draw? If we look at the portfolio of different software applications being used, the platforms that they're running on, and making sure we're focusing on the most popular, the ones that are going to have the most resonance with the different application teams, right? If you're a pure Kubernetes shop, easy answer, right? We were talking about that. But if you're all over the place, which certainly bigger enterprise you are, the bigger it goes, then you need to be a little more strategic, having somebody who kind of wears that product manager type hat. They're not doing external market analysis, but it's kind of internal market analysis, right? Turja, you talked about a product, platform engineering, kind of thinking of yourself as a product team, but your client, your customer is these internal development teams. So identifying those platforms there early on, and being strategic as you bring in support for new platforms, just like you would be strategic if you were a software company building out new features or kind of bolt-on features for your product. And you're doing it based on where you see that balance of what are the customers asking for and where do you see the technology going, right? Henry Ford, if I did what the customer asked me to do, all I would have done was build faster horse, right? Well, that's not really, so there is a little bit of listening to what you're being told and then understanding what is the industry looking for, what is the technology directions going. So how do you deal with these problematic teams? I don't know how many different teams there are in this individual situation. So we're on the other end of the spectrum. I would say that might not be your first customer. So, right, it's kind of like, I need to get new customers. I'm a platform engineering team. How do I get this customer who doesn't want to be my customer to be my customer? Well, the answer is there anybody that does want to be your customer? Is there anybody that can? So you can get that momentum and get that ball rolling, kind of selling to people who feel a little stronger need and will bring a little value for you. And that may not be that uber tech savvy team, right? It may be a little up-leveled. So like a Power BI team, a data and dashboarding kind of team. You're looking at people who aren't writing Java code per se. They're not writing Node.js. They're not coders, but data analytics is a huge platform. and that's its own way of implementing things. So start by finding who you want, and then also understand there may be times where you have to say, I get it, you've got your platform, you want us to support it, but we need to build that out on our roadmap because the demand's just not there.
I think the challenge with all of this is you need to build it in an elastic way, right? I mean, the days when we over provisioned everything to deal with scalability are over. The thing has to be able to scale up and down as demand requires, because otherwise the CFO is going to be like, how come you over provision this thing and we're only using the capacity of this thing at 20%? So I still see today, even in Kubernetes environments where, the thing is designed to scale up and down, people over provision it because that's just habit. It's bad, it's far from a good best practice, but it's out of control.
So I think that's a noble ideal, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
But I put it out to our audience. How many of you here actually have two-way elasticity in your cloud and Kubernetes environments? My experience is cloud elasticity goes one way, right? It's kind of like a timeline. Like chaos increases, so does the size of your cloud. So I would put forth, and I've had discussions with my friend Nick Lippis from Onig on this, right? Two-way cloud elasticity is a myth. And so I, as bad as it is, and you bring up the CFO, we have a Q&A question from the audience. We're kind of on point with that, which is what should the relationship with the CFO be in order to enable this kind of scalability? Well, I think one part of it is, Mike, you give him the fiction that we're going to do this two-way elasticity, Mr. CFO, so I'm going to save you money and not have extra capacity in there. But I don't know how that works in real life. James, Tersh, you probably have more.
So for example, I can just from the CFO part. So normally you need to treat your platform as just a P&L, with just like your profit and loss unit within your overall enterprise. So you need to have a business case. When you're asking for money, you need to have a business case. So how we treat, for example, our platform, just as any other business which is focused on clients. It's just that our clients are internal customers or internal teams. But we also have we have a CFO for the platform. We have a CEO for the platform. In a sense, we have a product manager team. We are treating it as if it's an organization within the company which does its own thing. Because at the end of the day, you are asking money. So you need to show return on investment. You need to have a good business use case. So all of that kind of maps together. So that is one. Secondly, kind of just alluding on to that, the pain of platforms. So when I used to do some consulting, so once I saw and people were saying we need to create a platform and we need to create a platform right now. So I said, you just start a wiki, just a simple normal wiki page, listing down your architectural patterns itself is a platform. It does not always have to be an abstraction or a component. Okay, so just in itself, it's a platform. So it's up to how complex, how much. We have $1 million platforms also, where, say, for example, JP Morgan Stanley, and there are many other companies who are investing in $1 million platforms, extremely enterprise grade platforms. And then, for example, if you just want to start, you start with a wiki and then build from there. That wiki can be just some architectural patterns that you consider as the good patterns or best practices. And lastly, regarding the adoption thing, kind of aligned with what James is saying is, so what we also actually did is we actually set up a separate platform adoption function, which is a part of the overall platform that is focused on helping people adopt the platform. Okay, so they have a very different kind of mentality than the other product teams, because product teams are building products. This is kind of like an internal pre-sales / consulting arm of the platform. And we are doing roadshows and all of that to increase awareness of the platform, evangelize platform, help people onboard to the platform. So this is kind of one way, but at the same time, completely not everybody will be aligned to your platform. So I have seen developers who have been extremely eager to hop onto a platform just because they want to enjoy as much of that platform as they can and not have to write code on their own. And then there are other opinionated people who are saying, no, the way you are doing it is not the best way to do it. So another thing that I normally talk about is choosing your customers aligned with the overall strategy of the enterprise. So the overall CTO of the company wants a platform, right? So he has a strategy. Now we need to go on to the strategy and increase the value of that platform. And for that, I need partners who I have to choose also. It's not always that the customer will choose me. It's also an aspect of me choosing my customer who I want to onboard. It's kind of like a two-way sync. Otherwise, this thing might not actually work and we might not get the adoption, because one team will come and create so much noise that it will kind of deflect the overall purpose of what you are trying to do. So choosing good customers, helping them, you should have your business use case, and you should have good metrics. And this is what a CFO wants to see. Okay, that how did, say for example, I am thinking that in this year I want to invest in a particular platform component like Kubernetes platform component, which can help me deploy Kubernetes clusters in an automated fashion. We need to link the creation of that component with actual reuse KPIs or key performance indicators, that okay, how many clusters were created last year, how much time it took, and now with this automation and this governance and everything, how much time will it take now? So that is the actual financial value. So if you can reduce even 1 hour, then you are actually saving say $32. So then if you kind of multiply it and spread it across the entire platform, you get a very good number, which is kind of your reuse KPIs. So there are different ways to look at this, but you should start at least somewhere with a platform and then kind of see. The more your platform becomes mature, then this is what we have seen over building a platform for the last 5 years, automatically people will come in adoption. There is a very nice article by Sam Newman, who wrote that microservices book. So he said that your platform should be habitable. What does habitable means is a developer should find enjoyment in using your platform, and adoption will come automatically. It should not be a mandate that you have to use the platform, because that will lead to friction and a lot of resistance. But if your platform is good, if you have a good unified experience, if a developer gets true value out of that platform, then 100% they will consume it.
Fair enough.
So much to unpack there. So many great things, Turja. You did bring up the point that I think is worth re-accentuating. Call it a customer success model, a manager, or sales enablement, kind of that internal evangelist to the development teams that's providing the feedback and training them and kind of showing them, here's all the goodness and the benefits that you'll get by using the platforms that our team is supporting. And, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink, kind of a situation, right? At least show it to them, let them see, oh, this is great. And so you're really attracting people to prevent that friction. Because if you've ever been around a horse and you try to force a horse to drink, it does not go well, right? They're much bigger, they're much stronger, they're going to push. Hey, an obstinate developer can be just as hard to move as a very large horse. So I just wanted to re-accentuate that aspect of what you were calling out. I mean, there were so many good things that you were saying there, but I do think that is really key to successfully scaling and getting your clientele on platform engineering,
Right.
having those people out there.
Yeah, to James's point, I think a lot of organizations or a lot of teams embrace DevOps in the first place to get away from centralized IT. So if you're going to show up and say we have a centralized platform engineering function, they're going to hear centralized IT is here to help again, and they're going to be like, well, tell me how that's going to be a different experience than the first time around. So, you really have to kind of not just show it to them, but you got to say, hey, we're making some commitments to you guys about flexibility and how we can make this thing extensible. Otherwise, they're going to be like, same as the old boss, and they're going to shy away.
Yeah. I think that speaks to going back to the beginning when we were talking about metrics and measurement. Like, that's a way that you can also measure ROI, right? Show them the benefits of the platform and how that impacts what they're ultimately trying to accomplish, which is business outcomes. And then here's how, if we do it this way, this is how this improves everything all down the line.
Yeah, ROI doesn't have to be solely financial.
Right.
There's soft dollars, but then there's just developer satisfaction. And it does take several levels of inference, but it has been proven, when you have a happier development team, they're going to do better at their job. Of course, it doesn't mean the company is going to succeed, because if they're told to create something that the paying customer doesn't want, that's not really on them anyways.
Yeah.
So ROI doesn't have to solely be financial cost savings. I do think those are key metrics to include in your set of KPIs, but then there's also just that that ability to focus, right? Reducing that cognitive overload. These are the key value points that platform engineering brings to the table.
Yeah, so just also to add on to that, and there is a interesting question. So just like I'm saying, just like James said, the developer productivity or the developer experience part. Now there are some well-established frameworks also. For example, there's a framework called Space Framework, published by the same lady who wrote the book Accelerate. So there are some good frameworks with which you can actually kind of try to measure developer productivity, which again, you can actually think that if my develop with the advent of a platform, if my developer productivity has gone up, then you can kind of draw a reasonable inference. At the same time, there is a question here which is interesting. The participant is saying, as you are rationalizing your application portfolios, how do you evolve to a platform model in an environment where the mindset is an application? So here I will kind of, at least how we envisioned our stuff, is that it's kind of like a organic growth. I mean, you will automatically kind of reach that stage where you will automatically see, even if they're not being called platforms, actually they are platforms. So you will see those pockets of, so say for example, there is a business unit, like say a credit card business unit or a tax business unit, and they have to do a lot of data processing. Over time you will see that automatically they have created a data processing kind of an engine. They're not calling it maybe a data platform, so they've already created, because they have seen such patterns across their business, that they found that the CTO of that business unit or somebody just told, guys, I am seeing the same data ingestion, data quality, data processing kind of a pattern. So how can I just, for example, rationalize it and reuse it, make it kind of a reusable component? And when this same event happens across the enterprise, when the company CTO is seeing this kind of pockets of stuff happening again and again, then automatically they will kind of, so I feel that advent to a platform is kind of an automatic. You will automatically feel the need to have a platform when you see so much duplication, lack of reusability across your enterprise. And again, as I said, it's like up to you how you scale the platform. It's like if you think that just having some best practices in a wiki is good, then keep it there and then work with it. And finally, when you see, no, now I have some investment, I want to create a foundational layer, say a cloud layer, where people can easily via self-service provision stuff, then you build that. So it's kind of like a journey.
And that point, Turja, is the platform engineering. It brought a good point to my mind. Is it's not always called platform engineering, but in essence, it is. So I was working with a client the other day. So just quick story. She was part of what the company was calling the cloud enablement team, and she was showing me that she put together. She wasn't using an IDP, internal development platform, right, with a GUI like a Backstage or something. And you don't have to have that to be a platform engineer. It was just a very simple. She wanted to provide development teams with a quick and easy way to provision environments to host a Node.js based stack, talking to a Postgres database on the back end. And she was targeting the Azure cloud. And so what she had done was kind of figured out what are the basic inputs that she's going to want from the development teams, presenting it to them in YAML. And I bring that up because an IDP and the GUI, and that looks good from a management perspective, but sometimes developers don't want that. You may find that they kind of want to stay a little closer to, we'll say, the sun, so that they kind of know what's going on. She took the YAML, used a template engine, I think it was called Yowman, to generate some Terraform variable files. Then she went through, this was all a nice automated pipeline. Then you ran Terraform, which then deployed a variety of things, resources to the Azure cloud, some configuration of pipelines in Azure DevOps, including repositories in Azure DevOps. And it was then said and done, and kind of all of a sudden they had this automated way that they could provision new Node.js apps, because that was a very common stack. That was one of the platforms that was used by a lot of different teams. Not every team used it, but let's just say, 15% of the community they were supporting. And I said, wow, this is amazing. Great job. Do you call yourself a platform engineer? She said, well, what is that? What's a platform engineer? I said, what you're doing right now, this is platform engineering. She goes, oh, I've always been told I'm DevOps. I said, oh, well, DevOps is a culture. It's a movement. It's a mindset. It's not necessarily a title. And I get that's kind of gone in that way, but you're doing platform engineering. So the point of the story is, you may have platform engineering today in little pockets, and you don't even realize it. And you may be doing it and you're not calling it that. That's okay. Keep calling it what you got. Go with the company culture. But it's more about the mindset of who's your client, who's your customer, and finding and creating things to reduce their cognitive load and enable them.
Yeah, and to that point, you might get more acceptance if you just say we're trying to do DevOps at scale versus start throwing around phrases like platform engineering to developers, and they're going to be like, well, what's that? And they're going to ask a lot of questions that you may not need to answer.
I think that depends on the organizations. I don't think DevOps necessarily has that much of a better reputation than platform engineering. With a lot, I think you got to weigh you got to read your audience on that, James, right?
Yeah.
And figure out what's the right thing to do. Hey, we've got a question from participant 292, whoever that is, but it really goes to the heart of why we're here today. And James or Tertia, if you can help this person, they're interested in deploying platform environment in their organization and looking for some guidelines about how could I start adopting it and where should I start? So can anyone guide me? And look, we're not going to boil that ocean today, but can we get them? Can we get them started? Where do they go to kind of gather this info?
Yeah. So again, as I said, that they can just start with a new wiki page also, just for now, documenting all of the patterns and all. But yeah, once you try to go a step further, there are custom platforms that you can build from scratch. Just like James was saying, that you will have an orchestrator like say Ansible or Jenkins or some other ADO, and then you have a source control repository, and then you have a front end. So there is many things you can do. Another thing is that many teams I have seen kind of go with some of the vendor products. So there is a vendor product called Humanitech, there is a vendor product from Port, there is Backstage from Spotify, which is not a completely end-to-end platform, but it's a very good internal developer platform. So there are some other options also. I have seen many of my clients actually are, because it's a lot of investment also, to be very fair, to have a platform, build assets on top of that platform, make it big. So unless and until you actually have a very big use case, a lot of business teams, it might not make sense to build a complete custom platforms from scratch. So rather you can, for example, just get some of those vendor products. The Port one I have heard is actually built on top of Spotify. So that is another vendor product that people can get started very easily. And there are many other products like that. So that could be an easy path to start.
Excellent.
You mentioned Humanitech. PlatformCon is another one. It's kind of I think it's been 2 years now that it's run. It's been an annual thing. Tying into that community, if we're talking about how can I get started through the lens of how do I learn more about platform engineering so that I can do it myself. Of course, there are a lot of consultants. I'm consulting, IBM Consulting, very big. Terja does consulting. So you can always bring in outside help to provide more tactical assistance. But in terms of pointers to education, I think you were just received a list of some great resources tying into that community. Humanitech's building a bit of a community there. That's one of the centers of gravity for platform engineering as an emerging discipline. I would also see if you can get access to some of the forward thought leadership coming out of Gartner. I'm forgetting the name of the individual off the top of my head, but there's a few that are really focused because platform engineering was on their hype cycle. So it is on their radar, right? It's in their purview, and you'll see some materials coming out there. And then from there, you'll probably see references to other things, and then you can expand understanding platform engineering and knowing it's not a one size fit all. It is not just like a product or a discipline, right? It is more importantly a mindset.
Agreed. I'm seeing a theme among some of the comments and questions. We talked about the relationship between platform engineering and DevOps. Platform engineering sounds a lot like centralized IT. It's a throwback. James, I think you said it best in that just don't call us late for dinner, right? I don't really care what you call us, but save us a seat at the table because there's a role here that needs to be fulfilled. Whether you call it platform engineering really depends on your culture and where your organization is. But the other thing is it didn't spring out of thin air. Yeah, there's a legacy there of centralized IT. Yes, there's these IT, IT it didn't just poof appear with the advent of Kubernetes or something like that. Of course, it's based upon what we've been doing over the years. I think we're just better understanding it and understanding how it fits in this continuum, right? And how it allows, where it fits allows us how to play off of that. Someone else put in a comment earlier too about they didn't understand how the whole SRE thing. Well, look, there are SRE people who say the same thing about platform engineering, but there is a role for SREs in this continuum as well. And I think we'd be better off as an industry spending less time banging heads on that my stick's bigger than yours, and understanding how they all play together, right, to form an efficient, scalable organization. You guys, as you said, both do consulting. How much time do you spend on that at organizations, getting everyone to play nice in the sandbox?
Huge. Most of the problems really, there are technical problems. I am not going to doubt that. And depending on the company and the product and what they're trying to do, right? I mean, there's a lot, there's a huge technology, but the majority of the dysfunction is less about technology and a little more about the softer side of things. And your question about, is platform engineering just central IT rebranded? When you say centralized IT, to me, that brings certain connotations of kind of the command and control, interact with us through a ticket system. We're going to be doing our own thing, bother us when you have to, and we'll try to give back to you. Right. That brings a lot of negative connotations. At least that's what I'm implying by the way this is said. And just based on my life experiences. So the biggest difference between that and platform engineering is platform engineering's goal is they're trying to say, I want to get out of your way. I want to give you some tools so your teams can go forward and do their development. But we want to stay out of your way as much as possible. And moreover, because we have somebody who's wearing that product manager hat, because we have people that are these enablement coordinators, let's say, kind of the internal evangelists, we are going to take extra steps to really outreach and listen to you very closely. So depending on what central IT means to you, if it means all the negative things that it could mean, platform engineering is a very different mindset approach.
Sure.
Great question here that I want to get to, though. I'm sorry to interrupt. We want to get to this. An audience member asked what the impact would be with the advent of generative AI on platform engineering. And I feel like we cannot get through this
47 minutes in and we got our first AI question.
I know.
It's usually the first 10 minutes, but okay. Yeah. Let's throw that on the table.
Yeah. So say, for example, how we are thinking about it is that just like every other practice, normally enterprises will have an AI practice, right? And with the advent of GenAI, everybody is trying to build chatbots and co-pilots and work with the OpenAI LLMs. So your platform kind of becomes a funnel so that you ensure, because these are tricky technologies at the same time, right? I mean, these are not very, at the same time, they're wonderful, but at the same time, there are a lot of repercussions. So you want some sort of a governance, some sort of a model, responsible AI, ethical AI, and all of that, data privacy protection. This is more important than ever. So your platform actually becomes another funnel for all of the Gen AI work. So as a platform, what you need to provide, you are providing building blocks and components. So say, for example, you provide a building block or a component to manage machine learning models. Say you provide a building block or a component to create copilots. Say you build something to train LLMs with. So this is how a platform will help you. The platform, again, will be the opinionated implementation of how your AI architecture practice thinks is the best way to do AI. If your AI architecture practice thinks that it's best that people in my company does AI in a regulated manner, kind of like within some sandbox and stuff, then your platform will provide you an AI sandbox offering where you can do all of the POCs. If your AI practice thinks that, no, I want it to be open to all, then it will be a self-service offering from the marketplace. So this is one aspect where, just like the data evolution and everything, AI becomes another component that your platform offers to your consumers. So that a business team or a IT team working aligned with a business or a stream aligned team, for example, does not have to think about, they can just write their Python code. They don't have to think about where will I run it? How will I manage the versioning of that model? How will I publish that model to a curated model store? So all of that the platform will take care of. This is one. And second, as a platform itself, you can think about leveraging GenAI. For example, say you have a lot of documentation on the platform, which is so some is in Wiki, some is in ADO Wiki, some is in SharePoint site, some is somewhere else. So you create some sort of a chatbot based on ChatGPT, which you can ask questions to that, kind of like your platform GPT. So you ask questions, how should I use the platform? As a platform, do you support Node.js? Do you support, how do I build a 3-tier web application using your platform? You ask all of the questions on that chatbot, which is powered by ChatGPT. So basically there are two angles. As a platform, you are consuming GenAI and AI to build a better platform. In a sense, you are using, say, all of your platform engineers are using GitHub Copilot just to write code faster. That is one approach. And another approach is you are giving industrialized version of the AI tools so that your business teams and your stream-aligned teams, in a sense, can consume them easily.
Yeah, I love how you demark between the two, because there's, how does Gen AI impact the way the platform engineering team does its work? How does it impact the kind of work it needs to do supporting the AI group, right, to do models, whether it is, you know, the open AI models, whether you're pulling other models from Hugging Face, whether you're using some of the Watson X industrialized models, depending on how the team that's going to consume and use the Gen AI, the business unit, right? So there's creating those pipelines for the business units that want to use Gen AI. Then there's using Gen AI yourself to improve your own level of service. Like you were saying, kind of, I know we've been doing a lot in this space to kind of help guide somebody through a bit of an interactive question and answer. Could be a chat GPT. If it's more sensitive kind of company proprietary stuff, then a privatized self-hosted execution model, self-trained is going to be a little more the direction people are going to want to go. And then finally, you've got using it itself, the co-pilot. So that team itself, platform engineering team itself, is leveraging Gen AI so that they can build out their automation. I think that it's a great, Gen AI provides great baseline scripting and ability to kind of get the basics up and running, but it certainly doesn't abstract the need from understanding, okay, here's what this thing created for me. It got me going really quick, but what do I do with it from here? Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many different facets that Gen AI is going to come in, and we're all figuring them out as an industry. So glad you brought that up. I know it's been a tidal wave within the tech industry. IBM's Watson X, with, you know, our own proprietary or Llama, or all the models on Hugging Face. Of course, we've got the open AI models, Google Bard. We've got all these partners, and there's a lot of noise in this space, and people are trying to figure out, well, how's this going to impact all of us? But none of that precludes all the softer side stuff that we spoke about, right? None of that is going to make the obstinate developer who doesn't want you touching, I think, change his mind.
Yep. Hey guys, I know we're.
I think the way to think about this is that.
Go, Mike.
I think the way to think about this is generative AI gives you an interface, but you still need an automation engine behind it. So you'll have a natural language interface that invokes something that will automatically create some script or some or execute some program. The thing that's going to be different is you may not have to be an engineer to execute that, because you just need to understand what the outcome is going to be. You can describe it in natural language, but there'll be some other automation engine outside of the large language model platform on the back end of this thing. But we may be looking at the democratization of DevOps, because it will become more accessible to a larger number of people. And I may not have to be a programmer. I could be a mere mortal with a graphical tool.
I think you know, similar to low code, no code was doing in development with citizen developers. Is that what you're envisioning? I know we're short on time. I wanted to mention two things that are happening in the chat. that were mentioned, and I want to bring it in case you weren't following along. So Robert Strand is he's participant 555. We've unmasked him. I forgot what the official term is when you unmask someone. But he heads up, he's on the technical advisory group over at CNCF they're working on a platform white paper. And I know, Terja, you already put in chat, you'd love to work on that. And, CNCF, Linux Foundation, the last KubeCon Mike and I were at, it was over in Amsterdam, and there was a ton of platform engineering stuff going on there. So this is a great resource for folks out here who want to get involved or take a little deeper dive. Also, I think it was James, you mentioned PlatformCon, right? Techstrong we were a sponsor of that this year. And I think that about 15,000 people registered or something like that for the virtual event. And again, it's a booming, burgeoning community. And I would encourage anyone who has questions around platform engineering to join in there. I think PlatformCon, it just happened. What was it? Not even a month or two ago, right, James? Was
correct? I think it was last month, around that time frame.
But that's just the big one. There's all kinds of meetups and stuff going on.
Oh yeah, it's organically growing, and I don't see it slowing down.
Yeah.
Yep. And then lastly, we put a survey link in the chat section. And if you do one thing here today, folks who are watching this at home or in your office, take a moment to fill out this survey. This has been an amazing audience, right? We unfortunately haven't been able to get to all of the questions and all of the comments, but there were some great ones. But we love doing these kinds of things, but we need to understand what it is you want, how you want it, how you want to digest it. So if you could take a minute and fill out that survey, I don't even think we take your emails or your identity. It's just, feedback, but it really makes a big difference to us here. So thank you very much for doing that. Sharon, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I'm going to turn around and turn it right back over to Cody, because from here on, it is his show. So, okay. Cody?
Awesome. Well, Sharon, thank you. Alan, thank you. James and Terja, thank y'all so much for joining us today. It was such an awesome conversation, and this hour just absolutely flown by. And Mike, thank you for being here as well. Cannot forget Mr. Vizard. So I would like to start off by reminding everyone that we have been recording this session. If you happen to miss any of this, or maybe you're not hearing my voice already and you're not here at all, we were recording, and you will be receiving an email with a link to access the recording on demand. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and be sure to look in the on-demand section where it will be waiting for you. So they've already kind of covered my base of asking you to do our survey, so that's pretty much all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for joining us for the past hour. We'd love to see you in the future on Techstrong Learning. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.